Welcome to another Tulsa Town Hall Forum from the University of Tulsa. I'm John Durkee. Thank you for joining us. We have brought 4 newsmakers into our studio today to answer as many questions as they can in 1 hour, dealing with economic development here in Tulsa. What's happening today and what's ahead for the city tomorrow. Let's meet our panelists. The Honorable Mayor of Tulsa, Dewey F. Bartlett Jr. Tulsa's Economic Development Director, Mike Bunny. Governor Fallon's economic leader, Bob Sullivan. And Tulsa businessman and the chair of the Governor's Manufacturing Conference, Larry Mocha. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. And now our journalists who will be asking the questions today. We have from the Tulsa World, business writer John Stankavage. We also have from Channel 2, KJRH, Krista Flash. And from Public Radio Tulsa, KWGS, Marshall Stewart. We will rotate through the panel and ask the questions, and we'll begin with John from the Tulsa World.
Mayor, as we come out of the recession, there's likely going to be quite a few, I think, economic development opportunities as companies look to relocate, look to expand, and undoubtedly some of those are going to be looking for incentives. What are the prospects of putting together a sizable incentive fund here in Tulsa, and what do you think that would look like?
I think they're pretty good. As you know, John, it's a very competitive market out there in cities trying to attract other companies, and we're competing mainly against several cities in Texas, the state of Texas, and most of the major Texas cities have deal closing funds that they have access to. But other cities around Nashville, the East Coast, I mean, many cities that are very aggressive have access to those funds. We do have some legislation that we introduced that is will be pending and hopefully be successful in the legislature in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City, that will give us that opportunity. Presently, we really have to rely upon our own excess funds in our general fund in order to come up with any kind of substantial funds, and it's not a lot, to be honest with you. So in order to be competitive, we feel that the legislature is going to need to help us, give us the opportunity, not necessarily funding it, but give us an opportunity to find our own methods. We certainly have the ability to ask the public to agree to some other methods of taxation that might give us a deal closing fund, but I don't see that in the offing at this point. I think we have to go to the legislature to get approval to do some things, and we'll give that a try.
Any follow-up, John?
Do you have a number in mind of how much you'd like to have in a fund like this?
I think if we had, I say $2-3 million annually would give us a lot of good opportunities. We certainly have the ability to go to the various boards and authorities that we have in the city to use their bonding capability to build things, and there's that capability that we can rely upon and have relied upon in the past. We do have concepts of new authorities that might be put into play that would give the ability for the city to use their financial capabilities to sell bonds. There are some bonds that are available to the city that can be sold, and then we can use those for building purposes, building buildings or bridges or things such as that. So we do have those at our disposal as well.
If you had a very large specific opportunity that involved a lot of jobs, would you favor taking that to the voters?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There would be a process to go through, but I do believe that the city has a history of doing that very successfully. We certainly have done that at the airport numerous times. I do believe that if a very serious opportunity presented itself to the community that would result in hundreds and hundreds of jobs, then I think it would be a smart thing to consider that very strongly and give it to the vote of the people.
Our next question from Krista Flash from Channel 2.
This question is for either the mayor or Mike Bunny to answer. Incentives are one way to attract new businesses to Tulsa, but area developers have often long complained about the obstacles in their way to developing in Tulsa. The zoning and is one of the zoning issue is one of the obstacles. Is there a time frame for updating the city's zoning code and when that could possibly begin to happen?
We have put to the City Council an amendment to the budget that will allow for an amount of money to be set aside where we can redo our zoning code. As you know, we've gone through a long process with several thousand citizens coming together and agreeing with Planet Tulsa. Part of that package was the need for us to revamp our zoning code, which hadn't been done in several decades. Get it up to date. Get it in conformity with whatever today's needs are, both from a residential and commercial point of view, but also from an economic point of view. We have to be very aggressive in using our regulatory ability in a progressive way, not a regressive way. And we unfortunately have not addressed that, but we are going to address it this year. Mike, anything?
Just to comment, I certainly agree with the mayor that our zoning code needs modernization, absolutely. And we have areas in town that were developed in different periods of time as you radiate from the downtown. If you look at the Pearl District, or if you look at far south Tulsa, real different zoning needs, and it's going to be a priority of mine to make sure that whatever we wind up with on the other end is sensitive to the different parts of Tulsa. We have large industrial areas that are historical industrial areas that we're working on brownfield programs and that sort of thing, and we've got to be careful to make sure the things that we put in place are pro-development, pro-business kind of regulations.
Is there a time frame for when to accomplish
Well,
these updates?
the RFP for the zoning consultant is actually in progress at City Hall, so I'm hopeful we can make significant progress this year.
This year.
Mm-hmm.
Next question goes to Marshall Stewart from KWGS. Marshall.
This is a question for Mr. Mocha, and Mr. Sullivan might want to chime in also. State of the Union last night, we have this kumbaya, everybody hold hands around the campfire atmosphere going on right now. But Larry, do you see beyond this anything coming from Washington or even the state in this new year that might help business in Tulsa, especially small business in Tulsa, or are there things coming that might hurt because of cutbacks that are being talked about?
Well, the big concern I have, well, first of all, the president is a wonderful speaker. I mean, he's very eloquent. I'm sure he's a very nice, very personable personality. My concerns are some of the programs that he talks about invariably are going to end up coming to us with higher tax. And I think anytime that programs are mandated or things that come out of Washington for us to have to do is going to result in higher tax. I don't see him asking the questions, how are you going to pay for it? And I think I think all of us in business are hopeful that the changes that we're seeing now, maybe the recession is over, maybe good things are about to happen. But if you look long, which is what we all need to be doing, we're still not tackling the entitlements, the big items. And I didn't hear anything from him last night either. Again, it was a great speech. I really enjoyed it. But I think there's some serious problems out there, and I think we need to tackle them.
Bob?
I just tag on to that, subscribe to everything Larry says, but as Oklahomans, and Tulsans, I don't think we should be putting in first place, as far as our expectations, what's going to come out of Washington that's going to help us. I think we should be very concerned about what may hurt us because of many of the things that Larry mentioned. But, this state and this city has a history of private sector can-do attitude about getting things done. And to me, I think we should focus on that, capitalize on it, and to the extent that government is not in the way and can be helpful, fine. But I'm just a private sector guy, and I think that's where the answer lies for the city of Tulsa, is getting private sector people who have in their gut the desire and the economic incentive to go do something good in Tulsa that'll help everybody, and facilitate those people. Get them accommodated as fast as we can, and let them create jobs and start new things. We have examples of that in the Blue Dome District and elsewhere, where people have stepped up and they're making a difference. So we need more of those, and we need to stay out of their way.
Marshall, I might add, if you don't mind, I was very discouraged to see the president when he teed off on the oil and gas industry. I thought that was very inappropriate. If there's one industry that sees the financial, the energy future of this country, it's oil and gas industry, and we have that in our DNA in the city of Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma. And to use it as a whipping boy, so to speak, I think was very misplaced. I would have much rather seen him talk about an energy future that would use the oil and gas industry, both the manufacturing side as well as their vision of a bridge to whatever alternative energies will come into play in the future.
All right, I'll throw out this next question to all of you, but probably start with Bob Sullivan. A new administration in Oklahoma City, the legislature now controlled by the Republicans. What will the new administration be offering to spur economic development? And to Larry Mocha, I'd like to follow up with, what do you want as a businessman, and Mayor and Mr. Bunny as the municipality? What do you need from the state? Bob Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. That's a raging question, of course, for everyone. Okay, the Republicans have taken over, if you will, both houses of the state and the executive branch. So it's their leadership to make these good things happen. My involvement in this economic development task force for the governor, really just this morning, we're just getting started. Frank, I was on a conference call before I came here. There are a few obvious things that are on the top of the list: workers' comp reform, tort reform, and more efficient, more right-sized government. But there are also some longer-term things, or intermediate term at least, that I think will, I hope, get a lot of attention. Things like state assets. Let's review what we have that can be sold so the proceeds might be better utilized elsewhere. Privatization. Are there functions of state government that can be privatized and so on, better in the hands of the private sector? And then some very long-term things, some infrastructure improvements. There's some discussion and talks about perhaps the Turnpike Authority could be used more like New Jersey's, which is an economic development engine rather than just looking after the turnpikes. Things like that. They're very long-term, but they're infrastructure related, and hopefully would help not just Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but other communities that are involved. And there's several of those, and I won't take all the time, but I will say that the attitude of the governor, her very first appointments had to do with job creation, and many of her speeches since then have emphasized that. And I've been around the new governor enough to see that I don't think it's just talk. She is serious about it, and I think that she'll have a fairly compliant legislature in that regard.
Larry?
Well, I've known Mary for a long time. In fact, I was chairman of the last 3 Governors Conference on Small Businesses back in the late 90s, and worked with her when she was small business advocate and the lieutenant governor. And ironically, Governor Henry appointed me chairman of the Governors Conference on Small Business this year, and that'll actually be happening in October of this year, in Tulsa, by the way. One of the things that we're addressing on the Small Business Task Force, or with the work that we're doing, if all the chambers are right, and the lieutenant governor and the governor and all these jobs are created, we're concerned, do we have a workforce to support it? And what we're seeing as products that are coming out off the street when they come to us to apply for a job just out of high school, or they're just not adequate. First of all, you hire the good ones that come in off the street, and you have really high hopes, and maybe they don't have a high school diploma, but you're hopeful that they do, and they don't show up on Monday.